Now is Gene Munster of Deepwater Asset Management's firm owns Meta, among other of the mega caps. Good to see you. So what's your reaction to what Julia just told us they did?
Scott, as a Meta investor, I'm surprised that the stock has kind of held its gains today. I continue to believe in what this company is doing in terms of infusing AI to really drive engagement across their properties of 3+ billion daily active users. So that is the substance, and then also some of the framework that they're laying around wearables is really important. But the details, the substance of today, I think was a little thin. Probably the most tangible announcement was this 500 million users of Meta AI. They're basically infusing that into Instagram and WhatsApp and to certain countries and Facebook. So it's a little bit different than like a comparable 200 million daily active number from OpenAI. And then they had the price cut like Julia talked about. And so this was more about incremental updates to what their vision is. And I just want to underscore the real takeaway here is beyond just being incremental. There is something that is material, which is Meta is making it clear they believe in a future where smart glasses, or they refer to them as AI glasses, are going to be hundreds of millions of units. Today, if you look at Quest, it's probably 5 million units, probably 1% of sales. But they're really putting the stake in the ground. And if you look at the stock, it jumped 1% on this news of Orion. Orion is probably 3 to 5 years away from seeing the light of day. And so I think that really underscores that jump on the stock is that investors really want to hear and are glad to hear that Meta is putting their foot down, that they see a future in AI glasses and wearables.
Do you think the jump in the stock, we can see from year to date, it's up 60+%. Do you think all of that is justified?
I do. I think that if you look at what's happened with their earnings, I mean, the stock is up 60+%. Earnings during the multiple has gone up from 19 times the out year to it's about 29 times. But earnings during that period are up about 40%. And we still haven't really begun to see the benefit of AI. And I want to put some substance. When we talk in AI, a lot of times it's like theory, like what is the real tangible piece here. And when it comes to the stock and about what earnings are going to be in the future, the ability for AI to drive engagement, to make it easier for creatives to build content, to make the content better targeted at users, that also improve engagement, all that I think is still largely on the come. And so, Scott, when I think about where this stock can go and think about the earnings power, I think that we should see upside to numbers in 25 as these features become more mainstream with creatives and their base alike.
How do you feel about Alphabet, which the firm owns as well? It's been an underperformer over the last month. It's obviously had a good year like many of these mega cap techs have had, but you do have regulatory issues swirling around there and some others too. So how do you view it here?
So we still like Google. I think that when it comes to the regulatory piece, we continue to believe that they're going to successfully navigate this. I think ultimately is that their search business, continue to do exceptionally well in the June quarter. That was a long time ago, the June, when they reported the June quarter, but it's up 14%, a similar growth rate as the March quarter. And so from our perspective is what they're doing in terms of adding generative search to their results and kind of layering in Gemini seems to be having the right effect. And ultimately, the question comes down to this, is will AI and regulation really sidetrack the business? And for AI to sidetrack the business, for example, OpenAI to come out with a product that is going to steal a share away from Google search, it really needs to be 10 times better. And at this point, the way Gemini has been integrated inside of Google search, it's OpenAI, and what they're going to do in search is not going to be 10x better. And so we continue to feel good about this. I mentioned wearables earlier. Google, of course, has talked a lot about wearables with their Astra project. And so I think that Google is still in a great place. It's the oxygen in the internet, and that hasn't changed.
I think you're reasonably identified with Apple over the years. I know your firm doesn't own it, but you do personally. You used to cover it, obviously. in your former existence on the street. There are a lot of notes out today that are calling into question demand about the 16. They're counting on a huge upgrade cycle, right? The stock had a massive move from the developers conference on, right? And now we're hearing doubts about lead times and what real demand is going to be. Do you have a sense of what the real story here is?
I do. We've done a lot over the past couple months, and just in terms of what this cycle is going to look like. And ultimately, I think that iPhone is going to probably grow closer to 10 to 15% in fiscal 25. The street right now is about 7%. And part of the reason is that I don't think the street has really understands how big of an upgrade wave is coming. That numbers get thrown out there, but I want to make it very easy for investors. Is in 2021, the iPhone business was up 39%. Had a huge surge, obviously, because of the pandemic. The average upgrade life is about 5 years for an iPhone. And so we're going to start to see this massive wave, their biggest year, that massive wave coming into an upgrade window. So that alone, along with easy comps, should provide upside to the iPhone numbers. But then you layer on top of that what I think are going to be AI features that are must-have. And that's the part that is a guess on my part. It's what I've seen in the features. I haven't tried them. Apple Intelligence, no one really has. But what I've seen and understand about what they can do, I think it's going to create a wave of a couple year of upgrades. And so ultimately, I still believe in this company.
You guys